Good afternoon. Well, it's good to be home. I represent most of us here in the Texas Senate down in Austin. And, of course, when we're in session, we are in Austin. That's where I am these days. But it's good to be home, and it's even better to be home and to bring a friend. Our Governor Gregg Abbott agreed to come here because this is an important issue for him. He's obviously no stranger to us here in East Texas, and he grew up just down the road from here. And so we're thankful that you're here. Representative Cole Hefner represents us in the legislature. Is here. Representative Hefner, thank you for being here.
Good to see you,
man. And we're thankful for the support of this bill. We know the issue, and we love East Texas, and we love the fact that we are not afraid of free speech. Free speech is that uniquely American right, isn't it? The right to hash things out, to hear views that we may not like, because we want to get to the truth. We want to get to the right place. We're not afraid of debate. Governor, you know, I get that Justice Brandeis said the remedy for bad speech is more speech, exactly, not enforced silence. And sadly, we have a handful of people in America today who want to control the town square, want to control social media, and want to enforce silence. If you have a viewpoint different from theirs, they want to shut you up. That's not the American way, and that is not the Texas way. And so they enforce that silence for people that don't agree with their agenda on religion or on politics or on freedom. In fact, my friend Don Garner is here with the Faith and Freedom Coalition, Texas. They're a national group, and they're promoting this bill in several states around the country because it's going to take every state, following Texas' lead, of course, to get this right and to restore free speech and freedom. And so running a tech company, you know, we have a handful of billionaires in San Francisco that run these tech companies. It doesn't make them the gatekeeper of free speech, but that's what they want to be. And that's not right. That's not how we're going to do it. These people control the new town square, and everyone should be able to come there and share their ideas and debate and hash things out. So that's what this bill's about, because today they can lock you out. There's no question about that. Many people here have experienced that, getting locked out of social media because you don't conform to their narrow worldview. This bill, Senate Bill 12, will give Texans the right to get back online when they're mistreated in that way. That's what the bill's about. Again, we believe it's going to lead the nation in restoring free speech. Of course, we're not talking about lewd, lascivious, obscenity, or anything like that. You still can't yell fire in a crowded theater. But your political speech, your religious speech, your opinion, sharing news, that's your fundamental American and Texas right, and that's what this bill does. No one should exclude you because of your viewpoint. That's what this is about. And again, we're so blessed to have Governor Abbott, who knows the Constitution well as an attorney, judge, a former chief law enforcement officer of the state of Texas. He respects and reveres the rule of law. He fights for it. We're all thankful for Texas opportunities for liberty, for the job opportunities here leading us through this most challenging economic crisis we've seen. We're glad to be in Texas, glad to be in East Texas, and so honored to be with our governor. Governor Abbott, thank you for being here. Please talk to our folks.
Well, first, thank you, Senator Hughes. One thing that Senator Hughes talked about was fighting for things. And let me tell you something. There is nobody in the Texas Capitol who goes to work every single day fighting for freedom more than Senator Brian Hughes. And I'm proud that he fights for the town that I grew up in, Longview, Texas. I know it's not Tyler, but it's still part of the great Senate district. When we went to the big city, we went to Tyler, Texas.
That's right.
But, you know, one thing that Senator Hughes fights for is Second Amendment rights, the right to life, so many freedoms. Now he's stepping up, fighting for the First Amendment rights so that conservative speech will not be canceled in the state of Texas. We need to recognize in Texas, maybe in particular in Texas, we see that the First Amendment is under assault by these social media companies, and that is not going to be tolerated in Texas.
Amen.
There is a dangerous movement that's spreading across the country to try to silence conservative ideas, religious beliefs. We saw that first arise on college campuses. You may recall last session we passed and signed into law the campus free speech law, ensuring that conservative speech on campuses would not be silenced. Right. Thank you for your leadership in that one also. But now we're all seeing the same. We are also seeing the same way that these social media tech companies are using their tools to silence conservative speech on their platforms. Senator Hughes' bill Senate Bill 12 protects Texans from being wrongfully censored on social media, making sure that their voices are going to be heard and not canceled or silenced. Social media sites like Twitter, like Facebook, they have evolved into the modern-day public square. These are the areas that used to be the courthouse square where people would come to talk. Now people are going to Facebook and Twitter to talk about their political ideas. And what Facebook and Twitter are doing, they are controlling the flow of information and sometimes denying the flow of information. And they are being in the position where they are choosing which viewpoints are going to be allowed to be presented. Texas is taking a stand against big tech political censorship.
Amen.
We're not going to allow it in the Lone Star State. What Senator Hughes' legislation does is it prohibits social media companies from censoring Texans based upon Texans' viewpoints. It would also allow any Texan who has been canceled or censored or deplatformed to be able to file a lawsuit against Twitter, Facebook, or any of these other companies and make sure they are able to get back on so they can share their viewpoints so that we can have a robust conversation on all of these platforms about our political viewpoints.
That's right. Amen. That's right.
The United States of America was built on freedom of speech and healthy public debate. Big tech's efforts to silence conservative viewpoints is un-American, un-Texan, and it is unacceptable, and pretty soon it's going to be against the law in the state of Texas.
Amen. Amen.
I look forward to working with Senator Hughes on getting this law passed and signing it into law in the state of Texas at the end of this session. Now, with that said, we'll be happy to take a few questions from the media.
Governor, Tyler area was hit pretty hard. A lot of people without water and power for a long time. Have you talked to any local leaders, and is there going to be a resolve for when this happens again?
So let's be clear about something. First, what happened in Texas is completely unacceptable. People pay their power bills. They expect to be able to get power. And for that power to be shut down is reprehensible. We've already identified some of the root causes of this, but more importantly, we've identified solutions to this. Let me tell you something. We are not going to end this legislative session without ensuring that the power never goes down in Texas again, and people in East Texas or any place in Texas will never have to experience this episode ever again.
Amen. Amen.
Kind of hard to see with the light, but go ahead.
Sure, I'll step away from it. Governor, I'm curious, earlier this week you said that Texans no longer needed the government to tell them to wear a mask and do these COVID-19 guidelines. I'm curious, what's the difference now compared to last March when you thought the state did in fact need to tell people to wear masks?
Sure. We are in a complete different situation this March than we were last March. Last March, people had no idea what the disease was. Most people actually had no idea what PPE even stood for. And now we have PPE in abundant supplies. This time last March, we had 0 test kits to be able to test people for whether or not they had COVID-19. But more importantly, there was great confusion about what the appropriate standards were to make sure that we would be able to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And up until just a few months ago, we really had no medical treatments to deal with COVID-19. Early on in the fall, we did have antibody therapeutic drugs that came out. I say in the fall, in October. We had antibody therapeutic drugs that came out that were able to treat people who contracted COVID. Now, most importantly, we have vaccines that we began to distribute in December and elevate and escalate and increase the amount of vaccines that are being provided. Over the past week, in just 1 week alone, we administered more than 1.2 million vaccines. We're averaging well over 150,000 vaccines per day. The most important thing I could tell you is that we have focused on the population that is most likely to either lose their life or be hospitalized because of exposure to COVID-19, and that is people age 65 and older. When the order goes into effect next Wednesday, more than half of all of our seniors will have received a vaccine shot. And then also by the end of March, any senior who wants a vaccine shot will be able to get a vaccine shot. Studies show that probably by early May, any Texan who wants a vaccine shot should be able to get a vaccine shot. And we've seen the results of the vaccines already. Because yesterday was the lowest number of hospitalizations that we've had since October the 14th. Yesterday was also the lowest positivity rate that we've seen since early October. And so the numbers are going in all the right direction. And so the state of Texas is not only a completely different situation, we are in a situation where it is safe to open up 100%. And every Texan here and every Texan across the state, they have learned for the past year the safe strategies to use to make sure they remain safe. We do encourage people to, if they continue to wear a face mask, to continue to practice safe practices that will ensure that we will be able to get everybody back to work, with Texas continuing to lead the United States of America in economic growth and job creation.
Don't the tech companies have to be licensed by government entities that have to protect our unalienable rights? And why do we let these companies that are licensed by governments that protect our rights violating our rights?
Sure, I'll answer part of that, and then Senator Hughes may want to weigh in. A tech company per se doesn't have to be licensed by the government. Just like there's businesses here that may be in this building that are involved in tech. They don't have to be licensed by the federal government. However, with regard to these social media platforms, there are laws concerning that. A law in particular is known as Section 230, and there are special protections provided to these social media platforms that we believe, the way the law is written, the protection does not keep them immune from the type of lawsuit that Senator Hughes' bill provides. And so we are making sure that these companies will be forced to comply with Senator Hughes' bill to ensure that Texans' conservative speech will not be canceled.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Governor, I have a question. Upon lifting the mask order earlier this week, you mentioned that private businesses can still, in fact, enforce their own rules and guidelines. Speaking to this bill, it opens companies up to litigation based on enforcing their own rules and terms of services that people have agreed to. What is the difference?
Yeah, the difference is under the federal law that allow these tech companies to open up these social media platforms, they got a special protection that other businesses do not have, a protection that protects them from liability so long as they complied with the standards of that federal law. And we believe that under the law written by Brian Hughes, if they violate Brian Hughes' Senate Bill 12, they would not be in compliance with that federal law, requiring them to keep their forums open. They have a responsibility to make sure they keep their forums open under the federal law that grants them that civil liability protection, and we're going to hold them accountable for that.
We are. And I would just add, Blake, the Governor is, of course, exactly right. I would add, we don't allow your phone company to cut you off because they don't like your politics. Your cable company can't cut you off because of your religion. These social media companies are common carriers. They have chosen to enter into that business, and they cannot discriminate against people in a violation of the First Amendment.
With the mask mandate being lifted, what if, let's go into spring break, what if the numbers jump drastically? Do you see yourself bringing back another executive order, or just telling the citizens to be safe, that you know what you need to do?
Sure. Two things. One is, as we go in towards spring break, first, spring break this year is different than it is typical years because it's rolling spring breaks, it's multiple weekends, so it's not all at one particular time. It's so confusing, people may not even know when spring break is. But that point aside, because of the additional vaccines that we are administering, more than 1 million a week, it will mean, regardless of what happens on spring break, there's going to be far more people inoculated. Also along those lines, to go back and further answer a question that was asked earlier, another way in which Texas is different today than we were last March is, according to CDC calculations, there are now more than 10 million Texans who have recovered from COVID, making them less likely to be able to contract it again. Also, with regard to, let's say there is some increase in COVID cases, but more importantly, COVID hospitalizations. Remembering this key fact, and that is many people may contract COVID, but may not suffer any meaningful severe health consequences. If they do face a severe health consequence, they will go to a hospital. My executive order that goes into effect next Wednesday provides a guardrail for regions where they have increased hospitalizations. In Texas, we have 22 hospital regions. And what the executive order says is that if in any of those 22 hospital regions, the hospitalizations of COVID patients rises above 15% of the total bed capacity in that entire hospital region, then county judges in that hospital region have the ability, if they choose to do so, to impose some COVID mitigation restrictions to make sure they are able to slow the spread. So safeguards are built into the executive order that goes into effect next Wednesday.
Governor, I'm curious, reaction to the president's comments about Neanderthal. Thank you.
Listen, obviously, it's the kind of language you expect a president not to use. You expect him to be a little bit above that. But secondly, it showed that he really doesn't know the achievements that we've been able to achieve in Texas with regard to slowing the spread and increased vaccinations. But even worse, he could not have said it on a worse day for him, because the same day that he said that, it was revealed that the Biden administration is bringing in illegal immigrants into the state of Texas and then releasing them, and many of whom have COVID. And so under the Biden administration, he is releasing into the United States people who are COVID positive who are going across not just Texas but elsewhere in the country. The president and his administration need to step up and stop this program, first of promoting illegal immigration, but second, allowing people who are coming to this country to spread COVID across the entire country. That is extremely dangerous.
Okay, you're Governor. Right here.
Sure.
Hi, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about vaccinations being available for everyone by April. You've opened up businesses to 100%, ended the mask mandate by March 10th. Will you open up vaccinations to 100% and end the tier program?
So first, the governor is not in charge of the vaccination program. There's a special vaccine panel made up of doctors and other experts that make that decision. That said, the good news is this. Beginning this week, vaccinations were opened up to all teachers and all school personnel in the entire state of Texas. And then I am told to expect an announcement maybe today, maybe next week, about the next opening up of additional tiers of people who would be available. They will do that on a rolling basis because they want to make sure that there's sufficient vaccines so that you don't have people waiting in line too long. But just to clarify, because it probably would be more like early May as opposed to late April, when everyone who wants a shot will be able to get one. But we will be opening up additional tiers as we move along, because here's the fact. And this is an important mathematical fact. I told you that when we open up next Wednesday, more than 50% of seniors will have already received a shot. We are never going to get to 100% of any category, because there's always going to be people who decide, I don't want a shot. And so once you get to about 70 or 75%, you pretty much have completed that tier. My point in telling you that is because we will be at 50% on seniors by next Wednesday, you will see by next Wednesday announcements about additional openings of additional groups able to receive shots.
Last question.
Thank you, Governor Abbott.
Let me go to someone who hadn't had a chance.
Okay, we talked about President Biden. Let's talk about former President Donald Trump.
Sure.
We saw Twitter, we saw Facebook, we saw them censor him time and time again. We've seen legislation like this try to be passed before. What makes now different than what we've seen in the past? What can you ensure now with this new thing?
Sure. Is the substance of it, and I'll let Senator Hughes explain more of it. I'll answer part of it, and that is the other types of legislation, they try to basically cut through Section 230. This legislation actually wires around 230. It pursues a path that's not prohibited by Section 230, and that's what makes this different. It allows people to get back online who have been deplatformed, and there has been no legislation like that offered up before. But Senator Hughes may know more or better about that.
No, Governor, that's exactly right. Section 230, the federal law, Communications Decency Act, is what gives these companies so much power, too much power. We think that's a bad law. We don't like it, but it's the law today. We can't control federal law. Senate Bill 12 is been worked on by some real sharp lawyers, law professors, constitutional scholars. We read the words of the statute. In fact, Governor Abbott's legal team just filed a brief in the Supreme Court making it clear that under Section 230, states have the right to protect free speech. We believe this works. This will be the model for the nation. This is going to protect Texans' free speech and get them back online.
Great. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you all very much.